Okay, looks like we're live. Thanks for being here, Conservice team. Sounds like Mary Lou, you've got some cold weather in Texas.
Yes, we do. We Texans don't like that.
Yeah, I know, Doug. I'm looking out the window too, and I'm just like, yep, it's snowing pretty badly. In fact, I just got a message from one of my kids' baseball coaches saying that I'm not sure traffic's going to allow us to work tonight. So,
Uh-oh.
yeah, we'll see how that
That's
goes.
okay. I'm headed to Indy next week, so uh, I'll get the dose of 2 degrees.
Nice. Well, welcome everybody that so far has logged in. I think there were some technical issues with getting in, so thank you for any patience and work to find a way in. We really appreciate that. This is a part of a webinar series that we've been doing here at Mobley for the last few months, where we bring on Mobley customers and we bring on field and event marketers and marketing teams that have done some exceptional things and wanted to bring them to you in a way that they can articulate some of their plans, their playbooks, roadmaps, et cetera, to help you in the work that you're doing. We generally do this from the lens of the field and event marketer, often from the marketing operations team, as well as the marketing leadership. And so this is a little different in that we also have the sales team represented, which is fantastic. So Mary Lou, we're excited to have you on and share a little bit about that. And I think that was one of the really unique insights that we gained in working with Conservice around their ability to work directly with sales and get the buy-in from the sales team so quickly and see the value of it. So before we get started, what I thought we'd do is do a quick round of introductions. You may see that our names might be switching during this webinar, so hopefully you can remember us, but the system for some reason is grabbing the wrong names. But Doug, you want to get started, and maybe you, Amy, and Mary Lou can introduce yourselves, your roles, and then we can get started after that.
Sure thing. My name is Doug Jench. I'm Vice President of Marketing here at Conservice. So I kind of oversee all of the broader marketing efforts, and we obviously our biggest role in the company is to support growth, and that happens through our sales team. So we focus very much on how we support our sales team and as a B2B company in driving revenue and driving growth.
Hi, I'm Amy Griffey. I'm based out of Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm with Conservice. I'm an events marketing manager, been on the team for about 4 years now. We have a small events team, but each of us manage probably around 80 events each. I personally handle kind of the logistics for trade shows and all of our association events.
Hi, my name is Doug. Not really. I'm Mary Lou, and if you can't tell from the accent and the two-word name, I'm from Texas. I've been in sales. I'm about to age myself here since 1992. I've been with Conservice for 4 years. So needless to say, I do a lot of trade shows and events, which is why we love Mobley.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for the introduction. And again, thank you for being here. As a quick, just kind of housekeeping, I do want to remind everybody that you should find on the right-hand menu the ability to ask questions, to chat with each other. And we'll see those on our end as well. And we'll hopefully be able to answer all your questions along the way. If you can, while you're there, if you wouldn't mind just throwing in the chat quickly where you're coming in from, where you're dialing from. That way we can see sort of some of the uniqueness. And if you have worse weather than Mary Lou, let her know so that she's doesn't have to complain quite as much about. No, but we appreciate you again, Mary Lou. So the last thing that I'll mention. So you saw the title, right? Turning these live events into an ROI machine and scaling to 200 events. So the key takeaway here, hopefully that you'll all be able to get and be able to answer in your questions. Is, going from what is an industry that has, and Doug and team can articulate this better than I can, but has a very clear buyer and often those buyers that are at events, and it requires just really focusing on the conversations, the trust, and the in-person and human experiences. And that's something that we hold dear here at Mobley is we believe that a lot of the conversations and the trust and the human experiences working together in person are often missed when you have to get it into a marketing flow or a sales flow as quickly as you can, so you can continue those conversations on. Reps, although yes, they've got superpowers in remembering names and understanding and knowing people, it can get really cumbersome when you get above 50, 60, 80 people that you meet at an event. And so having the tools and the processes and the playbooks for how to do that and execute that are really important. And so hopefully you'll be able to take away some of that experience and those playbooks from the session that you can take back to your teams. So Doug, why don't we start with you? I'd love to maybe understand more about, you run marketing for Conservice and brought in to do some really amazing things where they hadn't had this function, or at least to the level that they wanted it ever. So maybe you can give us an overview of you and your role there and Conservice in general.
Yeah, so Conservice, we're actually celebrating our 25-year anniversary this year, which is really exciting for us as a company. Just kind of showing the long-term sustainability of our products and solutions. But about 4.5 years ago, the company realized we need to really ramp up our marketing efforts. We had an internal communications team. They really acted primarily as an internal agency and wasn't really that support to the external efforts, especially to what the sales team was doing. And so we slowly started to build the team from there. So, when we talk about the 150, 200 events that we're doing a year, like this really grew and ramped up because we were able to show the value in why we need these in-person connections. Before, really, the sales team handled all of that on their own. Our chief sales officer talks about, putting the booth in the back of his car and trying to set it up and breaking it pretty much every time, which, by the way, if sales people will break your booth every time if you expect them to set it up. So just be ready for that. But, we wanted to come in and really enhance the experience that people had as they engaged with our company at events. And then we got a lot of anecdotal, hey, this was a really good event. I had some really good conversations. And while that's great, that doesn't help me grow our event focus. That doesn't help grow the budget and the resources. We needed to be able to quantify the value of that. And so we had been looking at different options and solutions for quite some time to say, how do we measure this? So if a rep tells me I have to be at this event next year, that I have a way to quantify the value of it and make sure that, any company marketing budgets kind of fluctuate. And if they say we need to cut 10% of our events, I need to know which ones to cut or which ones to double down on. Maybe we need a bigger booth or we need more people at the event. Well, I need to be able to have some numbers and some data to be able to prove that. And so that's kind of the journey we've been on these last several years of trying to really enhance that kind of data-driven piece that goes with the stories that we were getting back from our sales team.
Doug, I love that. You mentioned before as well, right? The CFO and your CEO being very analytical. Events are generally like a piece of your larger marketing mix. How does it fit among the rest of your channels and efforts within? Where does it fit? What kind of percentage of the marketing mix is it? And how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, so right now it's about 25% of our total budget. Obviously, we do content, we do digital marketing, we do social media. We have a lot of other, paid advertising components to it. One of the things is that we're an established business in a very relationship-driven industry. And look, everywhere I go, the sales team is like, this industry is relationship-driven. And sometimes you're like, it is and it isn't. We found out really quickly ours is. So while we do use events for prospecting, one of the main things we use events is for that last touch marketing attribution to try to get them into a real negotiation. Or sometimes they're like, they're ready. We just need to get them across the finish line. And so as we started to quantify the events and look at different, how we put resources, not only money, but people, we just saw that there was a lot of value in having that in-person interaction. So I came in the middle of COVID. And so those first 2 years, that didn't happen as much and everything was virtual and all events were virtual. And as we came out of that kind of COVID era, the need for being able to sit in front of a prospect or even a client for a cross-sell, upsell opportunity became more and more crucial for us driving revenue and growth. And as we saw that, and we were able to quantify that, it helped us realize like we need to keep putting efforts into this. The other thing is our CFO will often ask me, if I take 100,000 out of your budget, what would you cut? If I give you 100,000, where will you put that money? So far, he's never cut it, but he's also never given me the 100,000. I'm still waiting for that additional influx in our budget. But I want to be able to answer that question and answer it confidently to say, you give me another 100,000, I can generate this many million in revenue for you. And so we really want to make sure that events, we can answer those types of questions.
I love that. Well, this is kind of a question for all of you, but Mary Lou, I'm kind of looking at you a little bit because you are on the sales side, and would love to get your take. Just after hearing Doug talk about kind of the importance of events, I'd love to know, just in terms of, because you know a lot of the people in the industry already, and it is relationship driven, like how do events still remain crucial for lead gen activities or lead generation for you?
So ultimately, there's a saying in the world that we're in, which is multifamily, and a lot of the events that I attend, don't make an enemy because you never know who you're going to work for or with. I think capturing those leads and being able to cultivate those relationships on the back end is crucial. You may know someone, you may know their face because you've seen them before, but actually getting that lead and being able to reach out with a personal message, nice to meet you, whatever it is crucial. And I think this plays a big part in that. I'm not losing your business card. I'm able to capture it through the app, which is invaluable.
I love that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I can imagine that those relationships are critical. And then Doug, you also mentioned joining, during the pandemic. You're not doing in-person events at that time. And in those 5 years, or however long it's been, roughly 4 or 5 years, right? You've gone from no events to we're doing 200 plus events in a year. And I know, Amy, you mentioned you do all the logistics for all of this. I want to get into a little bit more like the challenge of going from like 0 to now we're doing 200 plus events. What you have to think of, what are the complexities that are involved, the different tools that you have to use, like the people that are involved, the coordination of everything. Like, I don't know every step in detail that you go through, but would love to kind of get your take on, what are those key challenges and how you've worked towards those.
Yeah. When I was hired 4 years ago, it was coming out of COVID, and I was told that we did 35 events in a year. I was like, okay, that seems manageable for 2 people. But then in the first year, I think we did 77. And then now within a few years, we're all the way up to 200. So luckily we've grown the team a little bit. So now up to 3 events team members. We're still kind of a lean marketing events team. But like daily, I could be working on probably 15 to 20 events, whether that's just coordinating through a lot of it's through email. So coordinating with vendors, associations, our internal sales teams, working with our marketing content teams to kind of make sure everything is aligned. But there's a lot of logistics. So sometimes it feels a little bit like you're juggling things that are on fire. But we just really had to learn in the few years to be super efficient where we can be and like streamline what we can. So we've had to embrace technology in many ways. And like Mobley is one of the tools that we use that really has helped us kind of take less time to do some of the things that like could bog us down. So training, we have a team of 15 to 20 people on our sales team that all travel to events. Plus we have plenty of other internal team members who go as well. So taking that time to train them and make sure they got the app set up properly, like all of that can really slow you down when you have that many events. But using Mobley has really helped this last year to help like get everybody on board quickly, solve problems quickly. It's definitely been a lifesaver.
Awesome. Well, go ahead, Doug. I think you had something to say.
Yeah. So one of the keys is, when our team was running, 35 events, which if I told Amy 35, that was my bad because I knew it was more than that. But 2 people can handle that number of events, right? With some pretty basic processes. Scalability becomes very difficult. And that's where we look at processes, technology, software that we can use across multiple touch points, because every city is going to have potentially a different union and a different labor force and different rules and regulations for all of the other components, the booth schematic who you're shipping things in and out for, who can set it up. So we have to look for commonalities that we can utilize across the board. And the more we can utilize those commonalities, the more the team can scale. It also makes it easier on your sales team. They are already traveling a lot for client events, for prospect events, for trade shows, for conferences, and they can't keep track of it all either. And so we look, as we look to grow, sometimes we get afraid to invest in technology and we want to throw another person at it, but we want to do things that will benefit the entire sales team and the entire marketing and events team. And that's, as we've scaled up and ramped, we've only been able to do so because of those kind of common components that we can use across multiple events.
Yeah, it sounds like there's been a lot of those that you've put together to get to this place. Besides Mobley, are there any other technologies that you're using that you would want to call out that others maybe haven't heard of, or maybe are interested in knowing about as you scaled and automated some of these things?
On the planning side, we use a program called Exhibit Day. That's kind of our management system, and it's really great for specifically events. Like, it's what it's set up for. So, and we work, like, we can have all of our vendors on there as well. So it's easy to communicate back and forth and see everything you need for each trade show. But then we also have like CRM, like we use HubSpot for communications, Salesforce. Yeah, those are kind of the big ones that I can think of. We use Cvent for we host some internal conferences or customer conferences. Cvent is another one that we've embraced this last year that's helped a lot with communications with all those customers and prospects.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. So you kind of mentioned too a little bit about Mobley, and Mary Lou, I'm kind of looking at you too on this one, because as I think about the sales rep experience at trade shows, right? There's just a lot of incongruency from event to event around the technology, the apps, the way you collect leads. Some don't have any app or any technology, right? So you're collecting business cards. Can you maybe describe a little bit about some of the efficiencies gained or the benefit that you've experienced from having that kind of the same app at every event that you're going to now?
Well, familiarity. I mean, obviously that's a big component, right? It's something that you're used to. You don't have to think about while you're talking. If you're using the same thing every time, it's definitely easier. You're not having to think about it when you're focusing on that prospect that stops by the booth. The other thing that came to mind was all of those business cards and all of the time that you're using what do you do with those? I mean, it's time, right? Or, if you lose your notes or whatever. In addition to that, on the same vein of time is having that lead data in your hand so someone can stop by the booth, their information is automatically in. I remember something from the conversation and where we can take notes that maybe I didn't put in before or didn't have time to put in before. I can immediately go in, have access to that contact data and update that as needed. So that almost real time experience makes things a lot more efficient, seamless, and then just better for us in sales and having that data at our fingertips.
And Chris, for the audience, that's watching this, not all sales reps are going to be as technologically savvy as Mary Lou is.
Whoa. Actually, I was going to mention that earlier because, I'm a little old school and I still have to go to young people to figure out how to work certain apps and things like that. The fact that it's really easy to use and it's very intuitive. I don't have to be a technology genius to be able to use it. So that's a plus.
Yeah. I love that. I was going to ask you too, did Doug and team or did they do anything in particular to help you get trained up on and make it easier for you?
No, actually, I think when it was first presented to the sales team, we were asked to go ahead and log in and set it up. And immediately that was pretty much it. I mean, there was a follow-up of the how-tos, but I didn't even need to refer to that. That's how intuitive it is. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so as we get into a little bit more on the ROI, right? So Doug, I know you mentioned this in your CFO, CEO, of course, they're always asking those questions around the money. How do we manage this? Where would you put your money? I want to get into ROI a little bit because Amy, you did a great job articulating like the importance of all of these little aspects of the experience, right? I'm curious how it kind of all works to contribute to the ROI that you're looking for at these events, and how you think about ROI at scale.
Yeah, so there's kind of two components to it. One is efficiency, which is essentially we're able to manage more events with some of these investments. So you look at the fact that, using a C-Event, using an exhibit day, using a Mobley, that we're able to actually show the value of those investments that expand the capacity of our team, as opposed to saying, we'd either have to say no to events or continue to add headcount. And then the flip side of that is then an actual like dollar amount that we can tie back to the event. So it just depends on how the marketing leadership is handling it. If you're a first touch or a last touch attribution company, we do track both, but we are mostly a last touch just because of size of the company, years that we've been in the market, our experienced sales team. While we do bring in, new MQLs, and that is a focus, a lot of what we're there for in person is to get people across the finish line. And so we want to be able to show that marketing had some attribution that can be tied back to that event, and then be able to just share, like, from the people that came and talked to us at the booth or that had a meeting with us, what happened with those either prospects or clients over the next 6 to 12 months. We do have a longer sales cycle, so we look at it over a larger period of time, but we're always looking at it and saying, first of all, it doesn't take a ton. We're not a software company, to be clear, so we're not looking at filling thousands and thousands of licenses a month from every one of these contacts that we come in touch with. But we do work in real estate rental market. So these are larger portfolios that when we bring them on can have a real impact on their business by adopting our solutions, and that we can actually then leverage that revenue to say, look, this came from this event. And so while we definitely share the high level metrics, how many leads did we get from it? We look at what percentage of those over a period of time converted. We're also looking at people that came and actually converted into a contract within a certain period of time, because that is then an ability to tie a direct dollar amount back to that event. And it doesn't matter, what that number is in the beginning, to be clear. Like, if you don't know that number, your first goal is just to set a baseline. And the number is what it is. If you don't know what it is, then just set a number. And then in year 2, say, how do we grow that? I think one of the problems is companies go in and they don't know, and then they want to grow something. Well, we need to make our events 20% more profitable. Well, if you don't know what that number is now, use it to just set a baseline for some period of time, and then build strategies to increase on it. And that's really kind of the iteration of what we've done over these last few years, is just how many people are coming to our booth, how many are prospects, how many are existing clients. And that then gives us an ability to paint a picture and then say, okay, how do we make our booth more valuable? How do we work with whoever's on site to be able to capture? And if your sales team and your marketing team have a strong tie and work really closely together, they're going to realize, like, hey, as the sales rep or the AE who's here, if I utilize these processes and these technologies, this is going to help me be able to like have more success and more of these events in the future. So if we see things are going well and a rep says, hey, there's a new event I would like to go to, it's a whole lot easier to add that into my marketing mix. If I can see that, look, Mary Lou's crushing it all of these other ones, let's give her another opportunity here and let's invest in that one.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Doug. And I think that I want to get into kind of the last 5 to 10 minutes here, like on the execution side, like what is it to actually run 200 events? But before I do, just piggybacking a little bit, Doug, Mary Lou, thinking about ROI for a sales rep, events specifically versus any other activity, how do you think about that from the sales perspective? Because a lot of our audience is looking at their field and event marketers, trying to figure out how do we better partner with sales and make them feel like we're on the same team and we're doing the right things. What's important and impactful for you when it comes to events?
So as Doug was talking, there was something that came to mind, and this kind of ties into the capability that you guys have with that lead enhancement that that automatic. I don't have to spend the time going to figure out who this person is, what's their background. It's all there. But to tie into what Doug said, utilizing that data and being able to, we've got a lot of trade shows. There's a lot of different events that pop up. Which ones are more valuable? Who is it that's stopping by? Is this particular trade show one that isn't necessarily the decision-making group that will typically attend this particular one? So making those decisions, because our time is spread thin as sales. I'm always on a plane, I feel like. And so where am I going to benefit my sales portfolio, my revenue numbers, the company's revenue numbers the most? So having that data, I think, is invaluable.
I love that. Well,
let me add one piece to that. So if I set a goal that we need 500 scans or 500 leads, and so we're scanning, a bunch of assistant managers to get to that number, and our buyer is not the assistant manager. Our buyer is, a senior controller or a VP above, or, C level, then my goals are actually working against the sales goals, right? And so sometimes we have to level set with our own teams of what does success look like for the sales team at this, and then how do we align marketing's goals with those? Because if I'm like, Mary Lou, why didn't you scan 500 people? She's like, well, I got the 10 people I needed to that are going to actually move the needle and help me hit my quota and drive revenue. And that's what I should care about too. And sometimes you got to go back internally and say, are our goals, are our metrics aligned with company goals and the sales team? And if they're not, then we need to shift those. And I've seen at lots of organizations I've worked at where those two goals actually work against each other. We want to make sure that we're focused on revenue and sales success.
Yeah. Bringing marketing and sales together in terms of alignment of goals is supremely critical, right? Like you can't just focus on one thing on marketing and then on the sales side focus on something completely different. You're right. You are working against each other in those cases, and you see this all the time. This is a very common experience. I don't know if anybody in the audience wants to raise their hand and say the same thing, that they're experiencing this, but like we see it all the time when we sell into these marketing organizations, because we need sales to also get on board. And in order for them to feel like we're talking the same language and supporting them and their needs, the goals have to be aligned. So yeah, I love that. So as we talk about as we're about to end here, I want to just maybe kind of as a little bit of a playbook, Amy. I know you're like in the weeds, in the thick of this all the time. Like this is your bread and butter. And I'm sure Doug appreciates the team and what you guys are doing to make that happen. How do you what is that playbook? Because you think about from the very beginning, we're going to decide on an event. We're going to actually go to the event. We're going to try to attract people to the event. Like, what is that playbook so that you at the end of the day can say, we did everything we can to make this event successful. So we know that the data that came out of it is what we were hoping to get. And then we can make decisions based off of that.
It always starts with a lot of alignment with sales. Most of our events have actually come from them suggesting these ones because they're in the weeds. They talk to everybody. They know what events are kind of the ones where their customers and prospects are at. So a lot of our events that we choose to add to our calendar come from them. And then there's always like a research phase, and we have to really dig in and make sure it's the right fit, that we can fit in the budget. I know Doug loves the word budget. We're not always the best about it, but we try to make sure it does fit and it aligns with what we're trying to do to make it actually worth the time. And then there's a ton of signing up for things, registering, getting hotels, booth logistics. We do have a booth company that handles all of our shipping. And then we have a vendor that sets up our booths and tears them down. So there's a lot of coordination of those moving pieces kind of in that like middle phase. And then along with that is making sure that we're communicating with our sales teams and account managers who are attending. We do also evaluate like the 880 plus trade shows we do. Doesn't include also any like dinners, activations, stuff like that. So we also are trying to find those opportunities where we could maybe capitalize on that time we're already there and add some more that our sales and our account managers can do to get more connections. So we're always trying to make the most out of that time and money we're spending. And then, so that's a lot of communication all up in the front. Then we send the teams out. And usually there's not a ton that we have to do at that phase. It's all in their hands. So we're trusting them. And luckily we have an amazing sales account management team. They always do an amazing job. And then afterwards, there's a lot of luckily because we have Mobley, all those leads are already then going to the right people. So it saves us a ton of time at the end of a show, making sure that none of those leads are actually lost. They're connecting with the right people, getting to the next person who can continue the conversation. It's got the notes from the things that were said in the booth that we might not have known was talked about. It goes straight on to the person who can then continue the conversation after. And then we're on to the next one or the next 20.
Yeah, there's a lot. That's impressive.
Chris, I will tell you one thing that's really, really also helped out with this, and Amy and the events team have been fantastic, but one of the biggest things is that they do need to be on site sometimes. They need to go see what happens. We try to get RevOps on site. We try to get graphic designer on site, because a lot of times people supporting these events, they're never allowed to go to the event. For some reason, it's not in the budget to send them. And it changes, A, you can work a lot closer with the sales team when you're there with them, but B, having experienced them, they have more context around what really happens at the time in person. And so it's one of the things that I think companies need to look at a little bit more is they don't need to go to every event, but the people that are behind the scenes supporting, even, your copywriters who are doing, working with graphic design to do your booth layouts and your booth designs. Have they been to an event? Have they seen, what are you competing with? We talk about our main competitors, but you go to an event, you're competing with every other booth and every other company for attention. They're all going after the same people in the same market. And so that's one of the things that even our events team has said, hey, can we get this other employee out to the event? I think it would help them support us better if they knew what we were talking about, because they've never been out of the office. And some of them in today's world have never been out of their house, like they haven't, let alone into an office or to the actual trade show. So I think marketing teams need to look at investing in getting their people to the events. It'll help them better support the sales team.
Yeah, that's a really great insight. We actually send our engineers to events. Of course, we're an event tech, but when you send the engineers to the events, it's amazing how their eyes just widen because they realize, wow, that's the experience that the rep has on the showroom floor, right? Like we talk about how quickly does it need to work and how seamless does it need to feel and what kind of experience is it? Like we had one of our customers had 10,000 attendees at an event that they were hosting, where they were checking everybody in with Mobley. And so the people checking in had 100 people in a line waiting to get checked in, and they were standing out in the cold. And those are things that you just can't explain without actually being there, to its fullest. So I love this. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. And for sharing the insights that you've gained, how you've been able to accelerate your event strategy and really turn it into a revenue generating machine for your organization. That's been amazing. There are a couple questions here in the chat, and would love to have you answer those. But before we do, is there anything else that you wanted to add or any other thoughts that were lingering that you were like, yeah, I want to make sure that I can express this to the audience at all?
I do have one.
Yeah.
Because I live this. So Conservice prides ourselves on being a customer focused and customer service oriented company. And through the partnership with Mobley, I feel like you guys, from a support perspective, have a very, very good customer support team, which is important because I don't know if you remember this, but I was on the floor. I had an update on my phone. It kind of messed up my access to Mobley. Didn't really anticipate that happening, but was able to get it taken care of rather quickly. So, Amy, of course, helped with that too, but you guys were right there. And that's huge because I was the only one at the event. So I was the only one that had the app, but was able to get all the leads. So
I love that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. We absolutely, just like you, we do like to be as close to the customers as we can. But thank you. So the first question that came in that I think would be, and let me make sure Did somebody already respond in the chat here? Did I miss
yeah, I went ahead and responded there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks for doing that. I think just hopefully everybody saw that, but I think the supporting of both expansion and current customers is something that a lot of people run into. Is what are we doing at events in terms of everybody that might be there, prospects, partners, current customers, all those things. Do you segment them and think about them differently when those conversations are being had, and how do you treat them?
So one of the things that we do always want to quantify is the number of existing customers that we did get a touch point in person, right? That's, if they see a digital ad or they get an email from us, that's a very different touch point than if they stop by the booth or they went to a dinner. And so number one, just from a retention standpoint, from a company overall, like you should be meeting with your customers. Mary Lou's on the road all the time, but if she can meet with a handful of people in one location that they're already going to, that is a high value to us. And so we want to be able to quantify that and have a system that can quantify that as well. But then, yes, we do look at like what's happening with that customer. Are they growing the solutions that, we provide by them meeting with us, right? And we're trying to work on more of those case studies to be able to show like, hey, the more we can interact with them throughout the year, the more that we can gain traction on new products, cross-sell, upsell. The other thing that we do is we do a few hosted events where we're actually bringing in just customers, no prospects, and they could be small. It could be, 15, 20 people. Our larger ones are pushing 100, 105 customers, but being able to do those kind of hosted events, even if it's a small regional level, to be able to strengthen those relationships and then be able to give them an opportunity. We were presenting once at an event, and one of our clients that was presenting with us on stage, when we got done, they said, wait, you presented on this new thing that you guys rolled out last year. How did we not know about that? We've been looking for that, trying to figure out who does it. And we didn't know that you had an acquisition of another company, and now you have that capability. And that reminded us, like, we shouldn't be afraid to talk to our existing clients and say, hey, as trusted advisors, we have some new things. We want to make sure that you know about them first and foremost. And in person is the easiest way to be able to bring some of those things up. And so whether it's trade shows or conferences or hosted events, I think there's just as many opportunity for growing your existing customer base as adding new prospects into the pipeline.
Awesome. Well, I think that that's a great place to stop, Doug. That was a great ending to it all. We've had a lot of good questions. Thank you for answering them. And of course, to all of you, thank you for taking the time to be here and supporting us. This is what we're trying to achieve here, and the work that we're doing, supporting companies like Conservice is meaningful in the sense that it is helping drive value for these organizations. And so if you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You'll have the access to the recording as well after this that you can send to your teams. But again, thank you, and have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.